So we'll continue with the exam review, focusing on proportional reasoning for Chapter 2 of the Grade 10 course. First question says, on a specific date, the selling rate for China's yuan compared to the Canadian dollar is 0.1626 and the buying rate is 0.1271. How many yuan will you receive for 500 Canadian dollars? So step one, we're going to define our variable. We'll say let x equal the amount of Chinese currency. Okay, guys? Then we're going to set up our ratio. And we go 1 over the rate. Now, when it comes to this section, how do you know when to decide to use the selling rate versus the buying rate? We have to think from the bank's perspective. If you want to buy the Chinese currency, what's the bank going to do? Sell it. So it's 1 over the selling rate, and that's going to equal the foreign amount over the Canadian amount. So right now I'm in Canada. When I fill this in, what is the selling rate? The selling rate is this first number here, 0.1626. So I'll fill that in. No need to put the trailing zeros. It equals the foreign amount over the Canadian amount. Do I know the foreign amount? No, that's what I'm looking for. That's where the X goes. Do I know the Canadian amount? $500. And then how would I solve this? What do we do? Cross multiply, okay? 0.1626 times X gives me that. Don't forget to write your equal sign. 1 times 500 is 500. What would you do to get X by itself? Anyone? That's right. I'm going to divide both sides by this decimal right here, 0.1626. If you do that on the left, you do it on the right. That would leave X on the left and 500 divided by 0.1626 gives me 3,075. And I'll just go to the nearest 100, okay? Because we're talking money, 0.3. That's how many yuan I'd have for $500 Canadian. So we're talking currency exchange. So remember, if you're buying foreign currency, the bank is selling. If you are selling the foreign currency, the bank is buying. So on the same day as the previous example, if after purchasing your yuan, you decided not to go to China and sold them back to the bank, it says, how much would you lose? So this is a two-step question. First thing I need to do is figure out how many Canadian dollars I would get back if I sold these back to the bank. So I am going to say let y equals. Now I'm saying y because I used x in the previous example. If you want to use x again, go ahead. But this time, x is going to be the amount of Canadian dollars. I'm going to set up my ratio. I will go 1 over the rate. I'll put the foreign amount over the Canadian amount. But this time I need to do what? What rate would I use? Yeah, I'm going to use the buying rate. I'm selling these yuan back to the bank, so the bank's buying them. So I have to use the buying rate, 0.1271. So that goes underneath. And I'll write selling rate, sorry, buying rate here. And I'll put that in the next line. So it's 1 over, it was 0.1271. Do we know the foreign amount? How many yuan do I have? 3,075.03. 3075.03. And I'm looking for the Canadian amount. That's where the Y would go. I'm going to cross multiply. 1 times Y is Y. 3075.03 times 0.1271. That gives me 390.84. Now that's how much Canadian I would get back. In order to figure out how much I lose, I need to think about how many Canadian dollars I started with at the beginning of the day and subtract what I currently have. How many Canadian dollars did I have? 500. So to figure out the loss, I'll call it your loss. It's going to equal 500 Canadian dollars minus $390.84. And that leaves me with 109.16. I lost $119.16 just because I canceled my trip. Everyone okay with that? This was the basis for this whole unit. We're talking proportional reasoning. We were setting up ratios or rates. The next question. Pretty simple one. It says a chainsaw's engine uses a mixture of 33 liters of gas to 2 liters of oil. How much oil must you mix with 15 liters of gas? So the first thing I want to do is say let X equal. What am I trying to solve for? How much what? Oil. So I'll say let X equal the amount of oil. And that's going to be measured in, anyone know the units on that? Liters. And while I'm at it, I must set up my ratio or my rate. In this case, it's a ratio because we're comparing liters of oil to liters of gas. Now, it really doesn't matter how you set it up. If you go gas over oil, that's great. That's probably what I would do because it says gas first, oil second. So I am going to write the amount of gas, 33 liters of gas on top of 2 liters of oil. That would equal how much oil must you mix with 15 liters of gas? Where do I put the 15 on this side? In the top or the bottom? Where? It's 15 liters of gas. Where does the gas go? On the top. What do I put on the bottom? X, because I'm trying to solve for the amount of oil I would need. And once again, we can cross multiply. I end up with 33x equals 30. I would divide both sides by 33. Those would go away. It would leave x equals 30 divided by 33, 0.9091, we'll say, liters. And you could finish that off, and you would say you will need 0.9091 liters of oil. Everyone okay with that? If you flipped it, if you put oil over gas, if it was 2 over 33 equals x over 15, if you flip those, you're still going to get the same thing. 33x equals 30. Divide both sides by 33. Okay, just make sure it's nice to write it down so you can understand which number goes on top. I put the 33 liters and the 15 liters on top because that was the amount of gas. I put the 2 and the x on the bottom because that was the amount of oil. And then the last type of question we did in this unit, we discussed totals questions. It says you want to make 10 cups of recipe number 2. So it looks like it's some sort of punch or juice. And they want to know how many cups of concentrate and how many cups of water you will need. Now, if you just, like if they told us that we were going to use 10 cups of concentrate, I could do it just like the last one. Or if it was 10 cups of water, I could do it just like the last one. I could put concentrate over water or water over concentrate. But this doesn't say 10 cups of concentrate or 10 cups of water. It's 10 cups of recipe number 2. So I need the total. How many cups would you use in total? 7. What'd you do to get 7? What'd you do to the 2 and 5? Add them together. We'll set it up. We'll say let x equal the amount of concentrate and when I set this up, I want to do the following. I'm going to go concentrate not over water, but over what? Total. This is how I need to set it up. So the concentrate over the total. Look at the given information. Concentrate on top, so I put 2 on top of 7. It equals. I'm looking for the amount of concentrate, so I'm going to put an X on top of what number goes here? Not 7. 10. I'm trying to make 10 cups. So think about this for a second. If you use 2 cups of concentrate to make 7 total cups of recipe number 2, this number here should be more or less than 2. Should be more. Okay? How do I figure out exactly what it is? I'm going to cross multiply. 7 times x would give me 7x. Write your equal sign. 2 times 10 or 10 times 2 is 20. And what would you do to get x by itself? Divide by 7. 20 divided by 7 is a little less than 3. 2.8571. X is going to equal 2.8571. And what would it be? What are the units on that? Cups. Cups of what? Concentrate. Now, I could do the same thing. I could say let y equal the amount of, what was the other ingredient? Water. When I set up this ratio, and it's a ratio because I'm comparing cups of water to cups total, I put water on top of the total. Could I flip it around and do total on top of water? Absolutely. It would just flip these numbers. Okay? Look at the original, the given information. How many cups of water? 5 goes on top of how many total cups? I'm looking for the amount of water it would take to make 10 cups total. This number should be bigger than 5. Why? Because I'm making more of the total recipe. Cross multiply. 7y equals 50. Divide both sides by 7. And you end up with y equals 7.1429. And that's cups of water. How else could you have figured that out? What would have been an easy way to do that? Yeah, I could have said y is going to equal 10 minus 2.8571. Take the total cups, subtract the amount of concentrate. 10 minus 2.8571 gives me that 7.1429 cups of water. And then you could finish with a sentence and say that you will need 2.8571 cups of concentrate and 7.1429 cups of water to make 10 cups of recipe number 2. Fair? That's it for today. That is Chapter 2, the Coles Notes version.